family?
Oh, fuck the family! The family, I let the family in my house. You know what? The family fucked my husband.
Miles, my boy. Now you know cheating is wrong, but you don't fuck with the family, bruh.
What? Fuck you!
Whoa, hey,
Alright, y'all, what is going on? This is your man, El Jamal, and this time I'll be talking about the 1997 film Soul Food. Now, this is an all-star cast including Vivica A. Fox, Vanessa Williams, Mekhi Phifer, Nia Long, amongst others. And this is going to be a part 2 of a series I'm going to be calling Where Did the Love Go? In part 1, we talked about the friendship between Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell, and the purpose of this series is to kind of break down the different forms of love people have with each other and different forms of relationships and how sometimes they may disintegrate and the factors behind them. So if you like what you saw today, please be sure to check out that first installment, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave comments on this episode as well. Alright, y'all, let's go ahead and get into it. Soul Food will drop in 1997 and will consist of a star-studded cast including Mekhi Phifer, Nia Long, Vivica Fox, and Vanessa Williams. And the story will revolve around a family in the city of Chicago and some of the more prominent interrelationships and inner workings of that family. And one of the main highlights of these relationships will be between the three sisters, Terry, Maxine, also Bird, and also the big element that brings all the family together, which would be Big Mama and her Sunday dinner. Now, long story short, things would fall apart, particularly when, Big Mama would start to have these health problems that would lead to her untimely passing. Problems between the sisters would pretty much, that had already been festering over time would just get worse and worse and would lead to a falling out between the sisters, and also many cases of just dysfunction between not only the sisters but other members of the family as well, to a point where again the family, it had really disconnected from each other. Near the end they would patch things up, but it would take a second and it would take some healing that of course we don't see. Now today we're going to talk about some of these more prominent relationships, how they kind of broke down, particularly after the death of Big Mama, and how this family, well, basically the process of that and how they try to fix things. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the main relationship we see here is between the three sisters, of course, Maxine, Terry, and Bird. And what makes this movie, unique in my opinion, is that we see three distinct people, not necessarily women or just character placeholders, but they have their own goals, motivation, and lines of thinking. But they also have their negative aspects as well. Like, for example, with Terry, she is the oldest child and she ended up being the most successful, at least financially and of course status wise. But she has issues at home with her husband. She seems to be unsupportive. There also seems to be somewhat of a disconnect within that relationship that we are shown. And also she seems to have somewhat of a of an antagonistic relationship with some of her peoples, because there's that reliance on her for a lot of financial help. Like Bird needed help to get a business loan, things of that nature. Maxine seems to need financial help from time to time, and I understand that, but again, the way that she expresses that frustration is in a negative way that rubs people the wrong way. Let's just keep it real. Then you have Maxine. She is the stay-at-home mom. She is the most traditional of the three. However, let's be honest about her. She's very messy. She talks down to her sisters, particularly Terry. They have a back and forth that's pretty nasty, and also they have their own history with Maxine sleeping with Kenny, who of course became her husband, but at the time was Terry's boyfriend. So you got that drama. And then finally you have Bird. Now Bird is kind of like a hybrid, right? She has her own career going, albeit with Terry's help, but she also is gonna become a mom. Now her little thing that she has going on is she has this ex that keeps reoccurring, and we don't know if she has feelings for him or not, but she's willing to use him in certain ways, and we see that pop up too. So that is a potential negative and a red flag. So all these, personalities blend together. And what we see is in the beginning, particularly at the Sunday dinners, we kind of see this on display. All three sisters take jabs at each other. They say these little things. Of course, Maxine has to bring up Terry's relationship. Of course, Terry's going to bring up the fact that she has the most money. She has to give everybody else money. So now, Big Mama will be the glue to keep a lot of this all, at least copacetic, and to keep everybody at least even keel, at least so they can, enjoy family time together. Because we do see them, particularly in the setup of Sunday dinner, we do see them, at least cooking together, helping set up the table, eating together with the other family, and they're, of course, interacting with them, and, of course, Big Mama. And, that's the importance about having, matriarchs and patriarchs in general. I know this movie in particular focuses on a big mama or a grandmother, elderly figure, but all those, folks, that are active within the family are, highly appreciated, to be honest. So, it just happened to be in this situation. It just so happens to be the matriarch. But, when Big Mama goes down, of course, what that does is there's no longer that extra or that deciding voice of reason, and that deciding voice of love, even to say, hey, put down your petty arguments and your disagreements, at least for this moment, and really let it go in general, because in reality, that's really what she wanted a lot of folks to do. Let go of all that shit, work it out, or let it go. And that's the best way you can do it. Otherwise, you're going to be carrying these negative emotions. Now, as far as, Terry, I hear a lot about, or there's a lot of discussion sometimes when we bring this movie up about her being, a victim, or her being taken advantage of. And I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of it is older child syndrome. And I think we've all had it if we've been the oldest child. There's a certain point, particularly for us boys, that there's a flip with both parents almost. And we kind of got to get more serious, get things more in tune, and, be a role model of sorts, even if you're not necessarily ready for it. I know I wasn't at the time. So you either build with it or whatever. Now, as a guy, you're taught to be, a leader, or, to look out for folks. You taught to, hey, you got a little something, look out for your people. That's just natural. I don't know if it's the same, and I can't speak for women. I could ask my sister. I probably will, just to kind of, I guess, to understand. But I don't know if the same thing is necessarily pressed onto women in that way, right? Outside of, of course, their child, or, of course, themselves. Even. So it seemed like Maxine was dealing with the older child syndrome of, oh man, I'm always having to take care of this, and also the independent woman kind of shtick of, hey, why should I do all this? Why do I have to? Kind of me. And, I think it's, on the outside looking in, of course, because you can't really speak for everybody. And, just looking at that character, particularly as I got older, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, would we be even having those type of discussions had Terry just so happened to be a guy? Because again, we're already pre-wired to do this. For her, it must be hard for her to, at least have the expectation of somebody, providing or for her. But here she is being a provider for everybody else. I would imagine that being hard if, again, that's how people are brought up and made, led to believe, particularly when she sees, Maxine getting that, despite, them being middle class, right? Despite Maxine and Kenny pretty much being middle class. As far as, the messiness from Maxine, I don't know where that comes from, to be honest. It might be somewhat of some jealousy, but again, you have a husband, you have a family. You have two kids, a third one on the way. I don't know where a lot of that comes from. That that anger towards Maxine comes from. Maybe again, it probably does stem a lot from just how Terry carries it too, though. Just I have to do this, or instead of just looking out for folks. But at the same time, I do understand. We all kind of grown here. Some of y'all can pick up some weight at some point, right? At least Bird got her own little business going on. Now, speaking of Bird, that dude, Lim, man, I don't know how, he was able to deal with that situation with that ex coming in like that. He showed up at the wedding real bold, right? Got all in her face. Now, he probably didn't see all that, but just, what's his name? Samuel? Oh, just drama. And the fact that Bird, knowing that she was married, knowing that she had a kid on the way, didn't really stand up to that was a red flag too. But I think, again, when you don't have that extra guidance, that extra word of wisdom, you don't think about it that way. Big Mama would have said, nah, you need to get that motherfucker about the picture, because you know what Lim gonna do. Anybody, any clear thinking person would have known how Lim was gonna take that. So they all got their flaws. They all not perfect. I don't think that Terry necessarily suffered. She just, part of being, an adult, and part of being, somewhat, I don't want to say the word successful. I don't want it to be like I don't want it to come off as we gotta be burdened because we, worked hard or we got to a certain point. It's just that's what you do for your people. It shouldn't be that hard for you to look out for family. So as much as I understand to some extent where Terry's coming from, it might be somewhat too much at times. Sometimes you say that though, but to overall be disgruntled because people rely on you, it's kind of weird, because that's kind of the point. That's what people gonna look for you to do. You can't really do nothing about that. Now, it's hard when you got a sister that's always talking down to you. It don't make it easy. That don't make it easy. And we haven't even brought up Faith. And mind you, Faith is her own little bag of worms. She just out the peripheral. All she was there to do was to expose the cracks between her and Terry, and Terry's and Miles' relationship. That's all she was there to do. Because, in reality, yeah, we can get mad at her, but, Miles made his choice. If you was that unhappy, you felt that she was that unsupportive, you could have left. You could have said that and just moved on. But to cheat on her, and to cheat on her with family dude, near one of y'all get no pass. No, Faith, I'm not giving her a pass either. I'm just saying, they both had a part to play in that one, and Faith is her own thing. Now, again, that just leads back to the dysfunction that was already brewing, that wasn't being talked about. And as much as I will say this though, and this is kind of going back to some of our traditions. As much as I love things like Sunday dinner and coming together as family and having those people there to, of course, encourage us to stop arguments, to, keep it level-headed, right? I also think it's important to face some of those problems as well. A lot of peacekeeping sometimes ends up just being, let's just all get along just to stop the argument so this situation could be happy. And we want to take the Ahmad approach and just saying and having the idealism of, a young child almost. A childlike optimism that, if we just come together, it'll solve everything. Just one dinner will change everything. It ain't going to take just a dinner. You're going to have to sit down, Terry would have to sit down with Maxine and really just let it be known how she truly feels about the situation. Maybe they figure out how they all can find ways to chip in for, Big Mama's situation, or in general, a family fund, or however. Maybe we don't have Terry just being the first call or the only call when it comes to financial, right? Maybe Terry cools out some time, no, and stops talking to people down. You know, those are the type of situations you're gonna have in the conversation you're gonna have. You're not just, oh, just calm down for the sake of calming down. Oh, I love you, sister. You can't do all that. That ain't gonna work. You know, and it takes a full family to do that. And another thing I will say about, you know, what I saw is, you know, I liked Lem's character because he was cognizant of what he did, cognizant of letting Ahmad down with his actions, particularly, you know, of course, in the salon scene and, you know, having to be arrested. Outside of that, I was really disappointed in the presence of the men in that movie. I felt they could have did a little bit more. Just say, hey, you know, let's all, let's all find a solution. Let's all input a solution. You know, Ahmad should not have been the go-between between Big Mama and the rest of the family. You had at least at least one knowledgeable enough man, being Kenny, to sit there and say, hey, y'all, let's do something a little bit different. Let's all come, you know, to the table. Terry got love for Kenny. She could have worked something out with him, and he didn't step up really. And of course, Lem was in his situation and still young. And of course, you have Miles, who, you know, probably could have been a good, you know, source of love and reinforcement. But guess what? If he ain't getting it from his wife, you know, there you go. So it's gonna take, in their situation, it was gonna take more than just a Sunday dinner. And there was problems that, you know, have been manifesting for years between those sisters. And it took the passing of the wisest, the matriarch, the glue of the family, for everything to kind of just fall apart. And here you have a story of the breakdown of storage, or love between family. All right, y'all. If you like what you saw today, please be sure to like and subscribe. All them good things. I got some more content coming out recently, within the past month or so. My favorite actor, Val Kilmer, passed away, so I'm working on some projects for him, some reviews. I'm actually going to be doing my first kind of, I guess you call it, biographical type project. So please be on the lookout for that. I'll be leaving the link to my Instagram in the description of the video. And if anybody hasn't told you yet, peace out, one love, and I'll let you guys later.